running with his baton and his gun, and the threat, if not the actual use of violence, to impose a certain amount of order and law. So there's an appropriate time for violence, we believe.
Point of view then, taking that ideology to ISIS, the topic of ISIS, what about ISIS is wrong?
Okay.
If anything, where would you stand in your opinion of that?
So as one example, and by the way, most Muslims would look at ISIS as, loonies and pretty crazy. Not because they want the idea of the caliphate, but in the way that they've gone to implement that. One practical example, concrete example would be that in the Quran, in chapter 60, verse 8, it says that God does not prohibit you from dealing kindly and justly with those who did not fight against you on account of your religion or drive you out of your homes. So the Quran's chapter 60 verse 8 is saying you treat Pastor Bruxy well. You treat the brethren in Christ well because they haven't attacked you. They're not fighting you on account of your faith. They haven't driven you out of your homes.
When you take over, we'll still be your friends.
Yes, I'll remember Bruxy.
Okay.
Yeah. But ISIS, with the killing of Jim Foley, who I think was just a journalist, I hope I got the name right, this would contravene that idea because he was a disbeliever by Islamic standards, but he was not there fighting and he was not there forcing anybody into a refugee camp. So this is something that Muslims look at as actually a very cowardly and an unmanly act, a dishonorable act. And if it's as simple as that they're giving people the un-Islamic option of convert or die, then certainly in principle we would condemn that. We would say that's un-Islamic, and so we're in agreement, I think, about that.
What would be the Islamic option?
The Islamic option, when there is an Islamic state, when there is a political Islamic authority, is convert or pay the jizya.
Right.
Or fight. The jizya being a sort of a tribute tax that the minorities give in an Islamic state in return for protection of their rights and freedoms and freedom of worship.
Okay, all right. So okay, good.
But I wanted to say a word just to look at the bigger picture, which is that in regards to the bigger picture of radicalism amongst Muslims and the Muslim youth, is that if we were to take a step back and remove ourselves from this church, if we were to pretend for a minute that we're space aliens in a video game, and let's forget that you're a Canadian, Anabaptist in Oakville, I'll forget that I'm an Easterner or a Muslim. Let's become objective space aliens that are just hovering in a spaceship above the earth, observing human beings. Now, what I'm going to say now really is radical, but I honestly believe that these space aliens observing us would not be so concerned and would not be asking the question of why are Muslims so violent. I honestly believe that the space aliens would ask other questions such as, why is this nation, America, so violent? Why is it that America invaded Vietnam? Vietnam didn't invade America. America invaded Korea. Korea didn't invade America. America invaded Somalia. Somalia didn't invade America. America bombed a pharmaceutical company in Sudan in the 1990s that provided most of the medicines for the Sudanese children. Sudan never flew thousands of miles over the ocean to come and attack America. Why did America invade Iraq? Iraq didn't invade America. America invaded Afghanistan. We could go on and on and on. And we're not talking about military coups and so forth. So I think that's the larger picture, and I think that some of the violence that we see in the Muslim world is a response to a much larger violence that is being perpetrated against them. Best definition of terrorism that I ever heard in my life was from an American comic book, Uncanny X-Men, where Wolverine says that terrorism is what the big army calls the small army. And I think there's some truth to that.
Better understand ISIS and perhaps a Muslim response to ISIS, although there cannot be maybe one unified Muslim response. There's going to be diversity, we grant you that. We would say, it is not the fact that ISIS uses violence to help advance a caliphate in and of itself that's wrong. It is that they are not practicing the violence in a just way, in a way that the Quran would govern.
That would be correct.
Okay.
Talk to us. If you had, you give a 20-minute tour, and now you only have 6 minutes left. If you wanted to give us the highlights of, if you said, here's what I would want you to know about Islam, what would it be? I want to reserve 2 minutes, so now you only got 4.
Very difficult to summarize in 6 minutes, but I would say an absolute, like an emphasis on the absolute oneness of God. I think there's many religions out there that say that God is one, but God is one, however. Islam teaches that God is one, period. No ifs, no buts. It makes perfect sense in Arabic. It also makes sense in Hebrew, makes sense in English, makes sense in Chinese, makes sense in every language of the world.
One is one.
Yeah.